These proposals would turn Israel's government into an elected dictatorship, and it would mutate the country into a sort of fake democracy, such as we see in Turkey and Hungary. By allowing the government, via its majority in parliament, to annul decisions of the Supreme Court, this removes the primary source in Israel of minority rights, of checks and balances, of basic protections for all citizens. And in a situation as brittle as Israel's is, with so many competing sectors in society, it's a recipe for strife, both internally and with the Palestinians.
The vehement refusal of the judiciary for so many years to be open for any change, from the smallest to the biggest, is it merely an eat what you cooked sort of a situation here, Mr. Sher?
Not at all. I think that the reforms are quite willingly accepted, but not these kind of reforms, which I believe are the epicenter of which are the weakening of the Supreme Court and the limitation on anything but whatever is politically easy or amicable to the government.
Among the many lies vehiculated here to justify what could be called a coup d'etat is the idea that the Supreme Court in Israel has been extraordinarily activist in a way that makes governance impossible. Now, viewers should know, in the entire 75 years of Israel's existence, the Supreme Court interfered with legislation 22 times, which is very, very meager compared to other countries. And I would add, in my past as chairman of the Foreign Press Association in Israel, I was involved in several petitions to the Supreme Court attempting to ensure access and to overturn closed military zones that we consider to be spurious. And I have to say they almost never succeeded. The court, far from being some bastion of hyper-liberalism, was sometimes close to a rubber stamp for the government and took the word of the IDF and of the Shin Bet almost as gospel. That's how it appeared to us. The current situation is the result of politics and not philosophy about jurisprudence.
But speaking of politics, Yehuda Glick, this is, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, what the citizens voted for. What we're seeing is essentially, again, according to Netanyahu, is merely the elected representatives delivering on what they vowed to deliver.
Exactly. And not only that, the very fact that the two panelists here today, Gilad and Dani, are refusing to understand that this is what the people feel. The government is going and has a plan. And we want to implement this plan. And the plan is to strengthen the Supreme Court, to strengthen the judicial system, and make sure it's not one-sided. And at the same time, to do what our voters believed should be done. And
I have to dispute this.
It should be respected.
Repeating it doesn't make it true. Netanyahu himself, not many years ago, very eloquently, very forcefully said he would never allow a weakening of the Supreme Court.
And therefore he's not
hold on, let me finish, please. He could have been at the rally yesterday. He said an independent and strong Supreme Court is a central pillar of a democratic system and that he would never allow its weakening. Moreover, you must have been in a different country than I was in September and October during the campaign. Likud had no platform. Yariv Levin certainly did, state that this is what he wanted, but Netanyahu himself didn't go there at all. He merely said that, yes, we want certain balancing reforms in the legal system. Now, look, I think I refer everyone to Occam's razor, the principle in philosophy that says that the explanation usually is the simplest one. We have here a confluence of three things. One, the settlers don't like the court because it is the primary thing standing in the way of thievery and total oppression of the Palestinians in the West Bank. The Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, don't like the court because it stands in the way on the basis of the principle of equality for their demands for special rights, like not serving in the army as a sector. And last but not least, the prime minister is a criminal defendant.
Is the judiciary becoming, or already is, an extension of politics by other means? Was Esther Chayut's speech, fiery speech, a mistake, Mr. Sher?
It was perhaps not appropriate, but when you are bombarded by such heavy artillery, you respond, and this is her response.
But this response is somewhat preaching to the choir, claiming the judiciary is playing a political role, Dan Perry. And listening to Esther Chayut, many are saying, you know what, there you have it.
We have here a situation that you have in other places in the world as well, where the very idea of democracy, and to an extent, the very notion of truth, fact-based truth, has itself become a political position. And that's uncomfortable, and it leads to inappropriate and extraordinary things. And you could argue that the Chayut speech last week was one of those things. But the court has to stand for democracy. If the government is attacking democracy, then the court is indeed in conflict with the government in a way that arguably is political. That's life. Life is imperfect.
Should the president get involved at all?
Simple answer is yes. When two sides aren't really talking, mediation always sounds like a good idea. And so, yeah, I support it, and the presidency is a respected institution. But I have to say that if Herzog really wanted to be useful, he should take a side. Because there is a side of democracy here and a side of authoritarianism. And when someone is trying to burn down your house, you need support more than a mediator to figure out which room to torch first.
Maybe it was all a negotiation tactic to set the bar so high, to talk about this extended reform of the judiciary when the goal, to begin with, was just a cup of tea.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. Netanyahu clearly wants to weaken the electoral system, and Netanyahu is the judicial system. Netanyahu is a master tactician, and I do think that he's allowed Yariv Levin to, come out on the stage with a nuclear weapon in order to potentially down the road lower the flames and agree to something else and present himself as a responsible adult. I would note this. Before the election, Netanyahu was boycotted by the center and the left, and they promised every day that there's no way they would ever support the prime minister or join him in a coalition. I strongly suspect that if the nuclear bomb is removed from the stage and Netanyahu agrees to rule in a reasonable, responsible fashion, they might reconsider, because the option of letting him rule with the extreme right and essentially burn down the house is too horrific.
So, Yehuda Glick, is this reform the way to expand the government to the center or the center-left?
I must say my tolerance is running out. The arrogance I hear from both Dan and Gilad about the lack of the Israeli government, the right-wing government, to rule. They need a babysitter. They need a Herzog. They need tactics. We don't really mean what we say. And Dan was telling me, actually, we don't want to change the Supreme Court, but actually the ultra-religious can't manage because they want to run the whole thing. The lack of trust that we, the right in Israel, and the ultra-Orthodox, we have a policy, and we believe in it, and we're trying to promote it, and that is why we went to elections. And we know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. It's not a tactic.
What you are trying to do here is to reduce democracy to its most vulgar baseline of majority rule. And I have to say that is not so popular, including among Likud voters. The idea that 51% can decide to do anything is infantile. I think if you ask the people, should 51% be able to kill 49%? Most would agree that's not a democratic outcome. And essentially, that is what's on the table here. The idea that the majority should be unchecked.
Gilad, Chair.
You know, there's a trend here to normalize the abnormal and to legitimize what has been up to not so long ago, the delegitimized internal terrorism and messianism, etc. And Netanyahu's government is openly committed by all his statements to further weaken both the fundamental values and the established state institutions, while systemically campaigning to crush the judiciary. So yes, there is a grand plan here. There's a grand strategy here, and whatever we've seen in the last couple of weeks is tactics and pure tactics only.